My wife leaves her engagement ring at home so she can hook up at work, all while still wanting to stay with me. The holidays were pretty good, at least on my end. We kicked off 2024 on a positive note. I hung out with friends after a hockey tournament on the first weekend of January, the 6th, while she went out with some colleagues, who she's starting to see as friends, last Friday, the 12th. She came home early Saturday morning, and we started what seemed like a good weekend with the kids, who are 2 and 5. I mainly work nights to make sure the little one is cared for and to take the older one to school. Once she's back from work, I head out for my shifts. I handle a lot around the house for her and the kids. I've been raising the older one since he was 17 months old. She has full custody of him, while the younger one is biologically mine. But Monday night, everything changed for the worse, or at least that's how it feels. Out of nowhere, she seemed to have some sort of snap and told me she wasn't happy anymore and needed time to figure herself out. She mentioned looking into therapy to sort out her thoughts. I was prepared to give her the time and space she needed. I even reached out to set up couples therapy since she brought it up during a calmer conversation that night. On Tuesday, she started taking new anxiety and depression medication. She said she'd been having anxiety attacks at work, mostly because she was thinking about our relationship and how she felt about it. This all came up after I asked why she had left her engagement ring at home, something she never used to do. That night, we tried to talk again about how she was feeling and what the next steps might be. At least I tried. But it was like talking to a brick wall. We weren't making any progress. We've had communication issues before, but nothing as bad as this. We've always managed to work through things and find our way back to each other. Wednesday rolls around, and once again, she leaves the ring at home. She said that wearing it just added pressure because she wasn't sure what she wanted anymore. She said she didn't want to put it back on until she figured things out. We had another conversation that night, and while it seemed to go a little better, she still wasn't really engaged. These were the kinds of conversations she'd always wanted, me opening up and sharing my feelings. Yet it didn't seem like she was truly invested. By Thursday, the ring was still sitting at home, and we didn't talk much throughout the day. Even so, I was still hopeful we could get through this. I had already reached out to a couples therapist, looked into our benefits coverage, and was ready to take things seriously when she was. But that night, she didn't give me much. She went to bed early, right after the kids. Friday morning, I didn't hear from her again, and the ring was back in its original box. I didn't know what to think. I started my morning as usual, getting the kids ready and taking the older one to school. When I got home, I opened my computer and started searching the web, trying to make sense of whether what was happening was normal. Then, all of a sudden, her messages started popping up on my computer, one after another. It turns out she had been heavily sexting a coworker I'd questioned her about recently. I've been cheated on in the past, so trusting isn't easy for me, but I had trusted her until now. These texts were nothing like anything I'd ever seen before. I couldn't believe it was her sending those messages while I was at home with the kids, and she was supposedly finding herself. I kept reading every message, trying to understand. She said that nothing they were doing would affect her life more than it already had. Turns out, she'd been giving him oral during lunch breaks, going out to lunch together, and on Thursday, they finally slept together. Now they're planning a night out next weekend while I'm home with the kids. My stomach was in knots. I didn't know what to think. He's younger than her and doesn't seem like the kind of guy who's ready to take care of her, let alone 2 kids under 6. Both with different fathers. I'm not sure what led her to this. When I confronted her about it, she said he'd expressed his feelings for her during a lunch, and things just escalated from there. When I tried to talk about it more, she struggled to admit what she'd done and still hasn't apologized. She's saying that this isn't the real issue, that what we need to focus on now is figuring out the next steps for the kids while she deals with what she's going through. She's also saying we need to talk more about it, even though I've been trying my best these past few days. She claims she didn't really think this through and went to bed early while I was still at work, trying to process everything. I asked if she was ready to end things with the guy, but she hasn't answered that yet. She wants to keep living together and even share the same bedroom, but I'm not sure I can get over this. We had everything we wanted and were set to get married in 8 months. Every part of me wants to try and make this work through counseling, but my closest friends and parents are telling me to leave, split the assets, and figure out custody. I can't imagine anything less than being with the kids full time and raising them like I've been doing. Am I crazy to think I can somehow make this work while she's still working with the guy? Financially, I have a place to go. She doesn't. She said before I accused her of cheating that she didn't see anything serious with this guy and he's not ready to handle kids. She says we'll talk about it today when I get home. I'm torn about what's best for me and the kids. I can't imagine being away from them. Has anyone else dealt with a similar situation? Am I crazy to stay for the kids and try to make her desire me again when she's already said she doesn't feel that passion for me anymore, but clearly does for this guy? How could I trust her to go out again when I'm not there, or go to work in the same building as this guy? Does this type of situation ever work out? She always told me she would leave before she cheated. I was crazy to think she wouldn't. But it happened. She's the love of my life. I'm so torn and heartbroken. She's trying to spin it on me, saying, I pushed her to feel this way. I never thought she would actually cheat on me. Now on to the next story. Story 2. My girlfriend talked me out of accepting a promotion, only to cheat on me with the guy who ended up getting it. This is a throwaway account since my main one has too many personal details. I just need to get this off my chest because I'm feeling beyond embarrassed, ashamed, and angry at myself for ending up in this situation. For context, everyone in this story is around 30 years old. I work as a facility operator, which most people would call a custodian, but I have some other duties as well. The guy my girlfriend cheated on me with, let's call him Ken, also works as a facility operator. Well, now he's a superintendent. I don't want to make this about race, but I can't help but think it played a role. For the record, I'm Indian, and my girlfriend Jen and Ken are both white Italian-Canadian. Jen has been my first real long-term relationship. We've been together for 4 years. Her parents have never been overly warm towards me. They'll engage in small talk for a few minutes, and that's about it. She's told me that they believe she'd be happier with someone more like her, and that if you were going to date outside your race, you could have at least chosen an Indian with money. I wasn't Jen's first serious boyfriend. She had 2 before me, both of whom were tall white guys, so I was different from them. I make decent money, but living in Toronto is insanely expensive. My base salary is around $55K, and with overtime, I can push it up to about $80K, though that requires working at least 2 or 3 extra shifts a week. A superintendent position opened up at work, which would involve managing the facility side of things for a cluster of buildings. The salary for this job was $75K, technically less than what I could make, but it would mean working fewer hours. I mentioned it to Jen, and she convinced me to stick with my current position since I could make more money that way. Foolishly, I agreed. I turned down the promotion and continued in my role, even adding another shift to my schedule. Jen used to drop by my work from time to time, so she knew the guys I worked with, including Ken. After I turned down the promotion, Ken was offered it, and he accepted. Then, Jen suggested that I take on even more shifts so I could earn more than the superintendent, which I stupidly agreed to. I was working my regular Tuesday to Saturday, 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., plus an extra shift from 2 or 3 p.m. until 10 or 11 p.m. 3 times a week. It was exhausting, but I did it to save up for a condo in Toronto and to impress her family. We were renting a place together and had just signed a lease until February of next year. Jen was thrilled that I was working so much overtime, even though we weren't seeing each other as much. I thought it was strange, but I figured she was just happy we'd be able to stop renting when our lease ended next year. She even encouraged me to take on more overtime, 4 or even 5 extra shifts a week. And like an idiot, I did it. Was completely exhausting myself, working 16-hour days, 5 days a week. But the more I pushed myself, the happier Jen appeared, so I kept going for as long as I could. Then one day, I fell ill and left my shift early, probably around 3 or 4 p.m. When I got home, Jen was in the shower, having just returned from work. I figured I'd surprise her when she finished up. He looked shocked to see me, and I was just as shocked to see him. He tried to play it off, saying he thought he was going to someone else's place and must have gotten the wrong door, but I knew that was bullshit. Jen must have heard something because she came running out. She pretended she didn't know him, but the looks on their faces gave it away. After seeing that I wasn't buying it, she tried to blame me, saying I was working too much and never had time for her. We ended up having a huge shouting match. I had given up the promotion, only for her to sleep with the guy who got it. Ken offered a half-hearted apology, but it was clear he didn't mean it, considering he'd been seeing her for a while. I'll admit, I didn't have much energy for intimacy, working as much as I was, and it should have been a red flag that she wasn't interested in sex lately. They admitted the affair had been going on for about 3 months, right after Ken accepted the promotion, and just before we renewed our lease. Jen even admitted that Ken was exactly her type, and that her parents would love a guy with the title of superintendent. Now I'm stuck renting this place with Jen for the next 10 months. We've obviously broken up, but neither of us wants to leave because we don't want to pay the rent alone. I don't even know how to end this post. It's just so messed up all around. There was no good reason not to take that promotion. I only didn't because she talked me out of it. That's 100% on my dumb ass. I spoke to the landlord on Thursday, and he had a separate conversation with Jen. I'm paying for May, and after that, I'm officially off the lease. I've secured a storage unit and will be packing up my things. Most of the furniture was bought by her parents, so I won't take any of it. It'll just be my clothes, personal items, and my computer, work desk. Apparently, Ken is moving in at some point, so the landlord will still have 2 tenants paying the same rent. My brother and his wife have generously offered to let me stay at their place. They're not charging me rent, but I'll have to help out with the yard work, mowing the lawn and weeding in the summer, shoveling snow in the winter, that sort of thing. So the good news is, I'm out of the lease without much penalty at all. A lot of people suggested I contact HR about this, so I did. There were a few misconceptions I want to clear up. All the times Ken turned down overtime shifts and I picked them up, we were both facility operators. He wasn't a superintendent yet. Since he became superintendent, he's working on a completely different cluster of buildings, so he doesn't oversee anything I do and doesn't assign my overtime. When I told HR what happened between him and my ex, they basically said they were sorry about the situation, but there wasn't much they could do. I'm still next in line for any superintendent positions that come up, but it might be a while before another opportunity arises. They did say they could add a note to both of our work profiles, making sure we can't work together and that he won't oversee me. This was pretty much what I expected from HR. I think screwing another guy's girlfriend is frowned upon, but it's not against company policy, especially since it didn't happen at work. Lastly, Jen called me last night saying she missed her period. It's 2 weeks late. She hasn't taken a pregnancy test yet, and it's probably too early to know for sure anyway. I told her we haven't done anything in months, so if she really is pregnant, it's a good thing Ken's making superintendent money now to support his kid. Then I blocked her number. The apartment is still half mine until June 1st, so I don't need to let her know when I'm entering my legal space.